These are just purely subjective opinions from a HSR LARPer tourist expert that has been playing this game every single day for the last 3 years. Feel free to leave your own opinions and comments down below, because the best tier list is a tier list that's created by yourself. Because there will never be a best tier list, right? So this is just gonna be a peace, love, and happiness discussion-ish tier list Q video. If you're watching this video, it means my editor is dead in-game. Because this video is probably one of the longest videos we're gonna make in the history of this goddamn channel. But in the interest of making it a little bit more digestible for my viewers, I don't think y'all have the attention span for a 3-hour long video where we talk about the Eidolon tier list for every single Eidolon in HSR for the year of 2026. The last time we made an Eidolon tier list video, I think it was like slightly longer than an hour. I think. I can't remember. So obviously, now that it's a brand new year, there's gonna be an entire new version of units, as well as changes to the old version 1 units, where most of them are basically either in the 50-50 loss pool, or they are free. So we are gonna split this video into 2 separate videos. This will be purely focusing on the Eidolon tier list, and then we're going to be separating the light cones for a light cone tier list coming very, very soon. So for a little bit of context before we jump in for the tier list ranking, to set some ground rules. Rule number 1. Right, I think this is a very, very important rule. A unit's Eidolon value in an Eidolon tier list is not based on their final unit performance, but it should be based on how well that Eidolon make them better. Do that make sense? So for example, if a unit at, let's just say right now E2 Silverwolf, right? E2 Silverwolf is really, really good right now, obviously, because of relationship. But the current full benefits of an E2 Silverwolf is not really utilized yet, because you can't get a 240 punchlines consistently. And we don't know if we can get that consistently until we see what the elation state is going to be like. Whereas on the flip side, from a E0 to an E2 Phynon, or an E0 to an E2 Firefly, those Eidolons, the value of said Eidolons would have incredible benefits. Because I'm assuming that if you're watching this tier list, you already have an idea of who you want to play. So you're thinking to yourself, should I invest in this unit's Eidolon more, or the other unit's Eidolon more, but usually along the same team? If you're thinking of which unit is stronger right now, that is not the objective of this video, right? For a tier list, like a performance tier list, kindly check out Pridewind's tier list website. So this is strictly based on how well their Eidolons improve their performance. Oh, this was back in those days, huh? Now we'll just start from scratch. It's a little bit too messy. Don't worry about it, right? Now it's the same, bro. It's literally the same, right? Okay, but in any case, while we do want to take a look at the unit's improvement of their Eidolons, we also cannot discount how well they have aged in the past 3 years of HSR. Alright, so that's criteria number 2. So by how well they have aged, so for example, right, maybe E2 Reba is a really, really good Eidolon, right? Maybe E1 Reba is a really, really good Eidolon, but Reba didn't really age that well compared to Firefly. Same thing for Bulio. So as much as those Eidolons would be a, decent enough damage upgrade, but their competitor is just doing the same thing, which is basically a great DPS team comp, but doing the job like way better, I can't reasonably justify putting them at like a very, very high tier. Because if you do go for those Eidolon investments, you will need to make up for those Eidolons with even more cost in the rest of your team. So maybe an E2 Firefly with like a E0 Dahlia and like a HMZ could get a similar performance with a E2 Reba with like maybe like E2 Dahlia and like E2 Fuke. Maybe they can compare, but you might need even more cost investments, which means you as a player will probably end up spending even more strategies. So that is gonna be the second criteria. Third criteria, this is not an elitist Eidolon tier list. We are not gonna factor in how well you are gonna be able to 0 cycle sustainless 4-piece eco 2-piece Volwag and like clear Apoc shadows in 4000 AV. No, this is really just more so for like a general purpose tier list upgrade, mainly for the players in HSR who are wondering, I want to upgrade my team. How should I go about upgrading my team? So with all those criteria listed out, let's just jump right into the official tier list immediately. Starting off with the version 1 units. So timestamp, we're just going to put version 1, version 2, version 3. Because I think if my editor lists a timestamp for every single name, he will go above it, right? So we're just going to split this by versions. I think one very important thing to note is that if you take a look in version 1, right, most of these units are a little bit homeless unless your name is Scylla. And even for Scylla, while she is really, really good right now, especially against Nikado, right, especially against some specific pure fusion stages, I'm not too sure if you're gonna be staying not homeless, because we have seen what happened to Blade and Jingliu. The moment the HP shield environment goes away, the moment Remembrance got their best result team comp, they became homeless again, right? So I will be a lot more conservative with the version 1 units. And as such, you can also think of them. Would you be pulling for a version 1 Eidolon in 2026? I think that would be like the best way to go about it. With all that being said and done, I think we can do the previous ranking as well, which is... Okay, so number 1. I think because you can technically get all of Scylla's Eidolon for free in the standard banner, you are probably never going to be pulling for a Scylla rate up. And if I were to be a guessing man, I don't think they're ever going to rerun Scylla ever again. So, as good as she is, in an Eidolon tier list, and then what the heck, guys, right? Same thing for... Okay, it's not really the same thing as Jingyuan is not in the standard pool. But if you take a look at Jingyuan's E1 and Jingyuan's E2... Oh, free section? I mean, it's not free though. Because you still need to pull in the limited banner, right? It's not free. Okay, it's just very simple. Would you pull, right? Would you spend limited Stellar Jades to pull these items? It's super fucking simple, right? So, with that criteria being done, I think this is very, very obvious. This is very, very obvious. This is... Okay, this is the first one. I would say it is probably along the lines of like mediocre, right? It is pretty alright. The E1 Sailor Wolf ranking from 2025 to 2026 didn't really change that much because Acheron is getting like a little bit rough. But I think I don't really want to put this that high, even though this is a pretty decent item to give you like 1-turn ultimates. We are gonna be getting... Okay, I mean, like, I don't know if it is, but like, we are gonna be getting a Nihility unit very soon. So if the next Nihility unit that comes out is gonna be able to, you know, replace Bro's role, that I don't really see like too big of a point in running E1 Sailor Wolf, especially when, you know, there can only be that many Nihility units. Alright, so I will still put E1 as like the mid category, a little bit higher than our E2. I think this E2, the only person that can make use of this E2 is essentially just Acheron, right? Because you get the additional debuffs and everything. But for 2 costs more, it is a little bit expensive. But if you were an Acheron main going for an E2 Sailor Wolf, I'm not sure if you're going to be committing for Blade. I'm not sure if Blade is going to be an Acheron support. I'm not 100% sure, but like, you know, for 1 cost more, you know, math, right? Alright, okay, I almost forgot. Super big disclaimer at the start of this video, right? Please put this at the start of this video. These are just purely subjective opinions from a HSR LARPer tourist extra that has been playing this game every single day for the past 3 years. Feel free to leave your own opinions and comments down below, because the best tier list is a tier list that's created by yourself. Because there will never be a best tier list, right? So this is just gonna be a peace, love, and happiness discussion-ish tier list. Q video. Okay, there's the intro, right? We had to put a disclaimer over there. As I was saying, right, moving on, E1 Kafka, if you're a DOT main, this is really, really good. Alright. I think if you're a DOT main, this is pretty much like one of the better items to have. I'm not gonna put in the same caliber as, okay, if y'all know who I'm gonna be putting in E2s, or rather the Pum Pools, you will know, like, she's probably not gonna be that caliber. So, pretty good. E2 is technically pretty good as well with DOT, but I don't really feel it's worth the cost. So, when you go for like higher and higher costs, you must ask yourself, is the opportunity cost of getting the E2 more beneficial, or will you be better off just putting for an E0 new unit? Right? E1 is a little bit easier, but like E2 is where it gets like they must be like really, really good E2s to justify their pool value for getting them over something else, right? So I'm gonna put E2 Kafka around the same as E1 Silver right here. Blade E1, I'm gonna keep it a buck. Are you really gonna pull Blade? Yeah, I didn't think so, right? So bada boom, bada bing, bada bang. Okay. I am extremely not biased. You are probably not gonna be pulling for E1 Dale. But if you somehow want to play E2 Dale, I can put bro around here. Alright, I can put bro around here. If you really, really want to play. Hey, like who knows if E2 Dale gets buffed? And I grew up playing E2 Deal, right? 我是 play E2 Deal 长大的. And on top of that, if you guys have seen all of our anomaly arbitration showcase, right? All of our testings, my E2 Deal performance is literally not that far off. Like, bro can actually clear anomaly arbitration as a version 1 unit. Granted, we have the power of vertical support investments, but you can still clear. Right? So I think if you really, really want to play, you are willing to commit for the cost, I will go for it. It's really, really fun. I really like the way that E2 Deal is that. He was E2 Final before E2 Final was a thing, right? So that's gonna be that. You just wouldn't, right? You really just wouldn't. And I'm gonna keep it about, I'm a little bit questionable with regards to Fu Xuan's sustained value nowadays. But I've been told that Fu Xuan can't really sustain that well. I personally have not used Fu Xuan in an insanely long fucking time because we have something called DHPD. And we have something called Hyacinth. And we have something called Hue. So, you know, maybe she can sustain, maybe she can't, but I am not really going to comment too much. But I just would probably never pull for any of these items, right? And E1 is give you crit damage, E2 gives you global passive, or rather local passive. I just don't think it's going to be too crazy. Alright, whole pass. You can get her for free from the shop exchange. So you will never pull for her. But even if you can get her for free in the shop exchange, there is this other unit called Asville. In case you haven't seen what's up in HSR. So if you were a follow-up attack main, she is basically as close to being homeless as possible. Alright, so that's gonna be that. Maybe she gets a North Flare one day. Alright, for each of these categories, no particular order. Because if you want to rank them by particular order, like from 1 to 2, it is like way too much min-maxing, right? And there's like a billion units. So it is just purely, if you're in this tier, you just wouldn't pull. If you're in this tier, you'll pull, right? Okay, very, very good. Moving on to the next one. Okay, this one, I think we don't really need to explain too much. Bro's relevance was about like half a patch. And then Bro said peace. So it didn't want to do. Next. Okay, you know what? You know what? Alright, we are just gonna move on. Alright, this is honestly pretty good value, guys. I would say you wouldn't pull, right? You wouldn't pull Hue Hue. You would redeem Hue Hue. Alright, so just heads up, you would redeem Hue Hue. Would you redeem an E1 Hue Hue? It really depends on like what you want to use Hue Hue for. So, for example, right, if you want to use Hue Hue for DOT instead of DHPT, I mean, I'm not a DOT main expert, but I think 12% speed buff is pretty fucking insane. Alright, so I think as a DOT main, you are most likely gonna be potentially committing for an E1, assuming you want to save that cost for another DOT sustain. So, what I mean by that is, they might release a DOT sustain. They might release an elation sustain, right? But if you are gonna be having an opportunity cost, right? If they were to release a DOT sustain in the future, would you rather spend that number of DOT sustain, like the number of pulls for a premium DOT sustain, to upgrade your DOT team, But if you have an E1 Huan, you could potentially store that cost you would otherwise spend for more vertical investments on your DOT units instead. It's an opportunity cost. Like, E1 Huan might not compete with like the Elation dedicated sustain. E1 Huan might not compete with the dedicated DOT sustain. If it, holy! As I was saying for the Huan pool tier list, right? If you can redeem for E1 Huan and she gives you the additional substitution to save you a little bit of strategies instead of pulling for the next best in slot Elation sustain or DOT sustain, I think it's not too shabby. But if you're already committed to replacing Huan, you don't want to use Huan anymore. Right, you don't want to spend that E1 free companion spirit for the E1 because you could save that for maybe like more companion spirits down the road. Then our value is gonna be like here, because you wouldn't really get it. Actually, it will go like, okay, maybe not this tier, but it will be a little bit lower. So it really depends on like how long do you want to stick with Huan and whether or not the sustain slot is gonna get replaced. Because like frankly speaking, the sustain slot gets replaced like quite easily if you think about it. Version 2 eventually was the greatest sustain HSR ever known, right? Lingsha was like, you know, it will do. Then by the time version 3 goes around, everyone was using DHPD, everyone was using higher seed. And we still haven't even seen a version 4 sustain yet. So I'm not really sure how that version 4 sustain is gonna be like, but like if it's gonna be like able to sustain that much better, I will be a little bit more skeptical getting the E1 Huan, redeeming the E1 Huan, because you could save that E1 cost, right? That cost on the Golden Companion, waiting for a shop update. Maybe they add Cyrene. Maybe they add Servidra. Maybe they add Tribute. Who knows, right? Who knows? So I will put her like around this value when it comes to redeeming, right? Not putting when it comes to redeeming. E2, I'm gonna keep it about, I don't think it's worth it. It's a little bit too expensive to redeem, right? I'd rather get myself a free S5, what am I calling? Free E6 Barbin for the 2 calls over there. So, a little bit. Unless you, okay, if you really die with Huan, which is a very valid concern if you are going to be a Huan main, because you probably get one shot every other day. Number one, they did improve her sustain, right? People that say that Huan can't sustain, they are like half right, but the sustain definitely improved. But if you are facing sustain problems, right, you can usually just reset God for a better RNG, so they don't get one shot continuously with like bad RNG. So this E2's activation is probably gonna be like quite low, right? I wouldn't really go there. So that is gonna be there for Huan. Okay, you know what? I think that's very fair. Now we're gonna be moving on into the last version 1 unit, and that is going to be Ranmei. I will be so for real. Previously, back in 2025, I think this was pretty good. In 2026, this is like, I don't think she's that crazy anymore. Like, I would actually not, I wouldn't even pull her to begin with, but I wouldn't even redeem her, because a lot of times, her original role, even in the break team, is getting replaced. Right? She's literally getting replaced by fucking E1 Tribi, bro. She's either getting replaced by E1 Tribi, by like HMC, or like by people going for all of those like crazy different teams, where you might not even make use of her E1 that much. For DOT teams, she used to be really good. I'll probably put her up here for like DOT defense ignore, because DOT defense ignore can stack very well. But we have triple DOT. So, the only place I can see people running a Ranmei nowadays is like, you're running a... You really want to run break team with Ranmei, which is like, not really a must per se. But if you want to redeem for an E0, I might not commit that much for an E1. Like, I would rather just go ahead and run an E0 Ranmei with an E2 Firefly. Right? So, opportunity cost wise, unless Ranmei gets like more usage rate outside of like these two teams, I don't think it's gonna be that crazy. Okay, actually, you know what? I'll put E1 a little bit higher. And the only reason I put the E1 a little bit higher is because her E2 is completely fucking dog shit. That's the only reason, right? It is like not as bad as the E2. But I honestly wouldn't really get this E1. But this E2 is like, it would have maybe been a little bit better if they changed the E2 to give you like break effect penetration. Because she was built to be a break effect support, right? Because you know, they give her an attack buff that you can't even trigger with any of the break units. Now, what the fuck is Bo's gonna be doing? So I'm just gonna be leaving her for the E2 right there. With that, we are gonna wrap up our version 1 tier list ratings, which is honestly didn't take that long. If you're wondering why I didn't rate, like I mentioned at the start of the stream, why I didn't rate E3 through E6 is because if you were a whale, you're probably not gonna watch this video. Unless you really, really want to make like an E6 tier list, leave a comment down below if we have enough likes. Okay, you know what? 1,000 likes, right? If you get 1,000 likes, I make an E6 tier list. But I don't think like most people want to see like an E6 tier list anyways, because people who get E6, they probably won't watch this, right? Okay, now we are gonna be moving on to version 2. All right, this is gonna be version 2 to save my editor a little bit of safety, because I always look out for my editors. First off being Sparkle. After the Nova Flare update for Sparkle, I think this E1 is pretty good. I want to say it's actually around this caliber, because the speed buff for her is actually substantial enough to the point where you could hit your Eagle 4-piece breakpoints a lot easier, and it also contributes you to building that E2 Sparkle. I'ma keep it, this E2 Sparkle in a vacuum, it might not be that crazy because it's only 30% defense penetration, and if you cannot stack defense penetration, it's at whatever. But the units that you run E2 Sparkle with usually scales off of defense penetration. I'm talking about your Archer, right? You have your 4-piece Quantum. I'm talking about if you want to run Sparksy main DPS, you can run Diver, right? I'm talking about if you even want to run Sparkle with like fucking Phynon, if you give Phynon like an E1 Syringa for defense ignore, the defense ignore can stack on like a lot. And 30% it is not a value that can be like, you know, just be disregarded. So I would put this around this caliber. And since you can, okay, actually, you know what? Oh, bro, I'm a little bit like, it is definitely better than run base E1, but it might be a bit expensive for Pooh. But it is okay, if I were to put it right, it's like probably in the middle of Pooh and above Pooh. If you get what I'm saying. But there's no tier in the middle, so I'm just gonna put it here. But it is for Edo is like a little bit expensive. Right? And also, the use case for her right now in 2026, it is still decent-ish enough because you can run her with mainly Archer, Phynon, and if you want to, main DPS Sparksy, and all 3 main DPS, they are doing relatively well. Alright, but in the future, maybe next year, if Phynon, Archer, and Sparksy, they are like homeless, they are like Akron tier, I will drop this down to here. You know what I'm saying? Because it will also depend on like how good your support is gonna be ran with in relative to your DPS, right? So for now in 2026, this will be not that shabby. Moving on to the next one, I think E1 Blackstone is honestly really, really good for DOT, right? Okay, and the reason why you see, like, I'm not biased for DOT mains, but it is really just like DOT mains, they are such a niche subset of players that if you were a DOT main, you would definitely get those DOT upgrades. Because you would skip everyone else, right? A DOT main does not concern themselves with like flagships. It's that the Lion doesn't concern themselves with like power creep or whatever. So DOT mains who want to do a lot of fucking for DOT, they wouldn't really waste their costs on other units because their E1 has incredible value for specific to the DOT lineup. If you don't want to play DOT, then don't get them, right? It's just that simple. So E1 Blackstone, I'm gonna give that up over there. I think E2 Blackstone is like a little bit expensive. She is mainly probably just gonna be used for like your additional enemy spawning. So I don't think it's gonna be as valuable. So I'll drop it down a little bit lower over here. But both of these E1s for the DOT mummies, if you want to play DOT, I think this. Oh, that's not E2. Am I blind? I mistyped, yes, right? I mistyped. I misplaced, bro, right? That is gonna be that. Moving on into the next unit. Oh, the Acheron in the room. The Acheron in the room, guys. The E1 and E2 Acheron. You know what, sis? By the time this video goes out, I think it's probably gonna take a couple of days. Right? The E1's value by itself is kind of big. 18% crit rate. You can fix that shit with better relics, right? But it is not gonna be down to this tier just yet. And I don't want to give this an already high rating because, like I mentioned at the very start of the video, you want to look at their improvements, right? While E2 Acheron frees up your restrictions for running, like, what, 2 nihilities, a lot of times you don't really mind running that many nihilities anyways. Especially if the next nihility unit is gonna be doing very, very well with maybe like, who knows, like maybe like Silver, where the fuck. that E2 vertical cost upgrade might not seem that much crazier compared to a 1 cost upgrade for a brand new like airline. Alright, is like, would you go in for like a E6 face out, or would you just spend 1 cost for an airstream? Alright, so with that logic being established, I will just put E2 Aircon over here. It might look a little bit crazy. Okay, you know what? Is this E1? Okay, this is E1, right? Okay, it feels like a fucking crime to put E2 and E2 deal in the same level here. I need like more like distinctions actually. Pool plus. Okay, I'll call this pool plus, yes, because like it is like a little bit it's a little bit hard to see properly. Alright. Give me 1 second. Let me adjust this a little bit. Okay, we'll shift everyone up by 1 here. Okay, from here, we are gonna continue. Okay, rewind back. We added a brand new tier list of the pool plus. Swap a couple of things around. And then for Acheron specifically, I can't really give bro like a full-on rating just yet because 4.3 might change everything for Acheron. So specific to Acheron, take this with more of a pinch of salt. So maybe if like whatever happens in the future version, she gets bumped up, who knows. But for now, I want to be a little bit more conservative and then just place her in these 2 categories as is, right? Okay, moving on into the next tier list, and that is gonna be bro. I'm gonna keep it about bro is done. Bro is done, right? If bro is gonna be getting a rerun in the future, that's fantastic. But because nobody actually uses him as a sustain anymore, not even face out, bro is essentially done. He is straight up homeless. As a matter of fact, you know what? It is just straight up homeless. Bro, this is gonna be like... oh man, or some shit, bro. Let's move on into the next unit, and that is... oh... okay, you know what? I don't want to slander Boot Hill mains too much, because honestly, Boot Hill Eidolons is pretty good. Right, it's pretty. It's all right. Like if you really want to play Boot Hill, I think it's all right. E1 is E2. I don't really think it's too worth it, but this is kind of chill. And I'll put this E2 gonna be lower a little bit for the E1 because this cost investment for the E2 is not really too worth it. This one does give you the additional DMX, and also if you were a Boot Hill main, the E1 will inherently hold a little bit more than the E2, right? Unless this is the E2 Firefly level, I don't think it's gonna be that crazy. So if you do want to play Boot Hill, I would probably most likely stop at E1. Okay, Barbin E1, even though it is like quote unquote free, right? You could technically get bro for free in that sense. You really only still just use her mainly for facial or super niche zero cycle setups, which I mentioned at the start of this tier list. This is not really for like zero cycle elite, this kind of tier list. So because of like how niche this Barbin actually is, I cannot really recommend players like getting like more than this. I mean, rare spam is rare spam. I don't think it's that bad, but I don't really even think you might need to get that for facial. Because facial, no bias, right? I'm not having any bias. Facial is like, you know, it's a little bit like we probably need a little bit more additions, right? Probably need a little bit more additional effects, right? You know, maybe like a little bit of buff. So I am more so concerned if the unit after Asheville, which means the follow-up main DPS, can also make use of Barbin. If they cannot make use of Barbin, I feel that it's quite hard to justify giving her a high rating. Even right now, if you were to use Asheville as a main DPS, you are going to be running bro with Sunday and Tribby, alright, because you get the additional turns and all that kind of stuff, get on a DHPT. I think Barbin right now is going to be really niche, so if you do play face out, it's okay, but if you really want to talk about it, should be exchanging it. I think it is going to be a little bit more value than the E2 run base, but I also can't really recommend it by that much. The E2 energy regeneration is actually pretty good, but from what I've noticed when playing face out is that I don't really run with energy regeneration problems anyways, so there's quite a bit of overflow. Alright, the speed is pretty good, but you can kind of overcome that with like getting that additional speed subsets. So I think E1 is gonna be here, and then E2 is going to be there when it comes to redeeming, right? Okay, this one is actually okay. Y'all might like slander E1 Firefly, right? Bro, I think E1 Firefly is really good. Because the biggest problem I had when I played with E0 Firefly is that, bro, the skill points don't fucking exist, bro. The additional skill point economy helps me scale extremely well. Actually, you know what? Since of how good Break is, I actually think this E1 is gonna be up here. Maybe not as diabolical as Straight in a Vacuum compared to the DOTs, but I think the E1 has significant value. And on top of that, I think if I put Firefly as the first poo, is it too much? Okay, like I feel like if you're a Firefly main, you're gonna poo, bro. Right? Like, come on. If you are a Firefly main, you will the E2 Firefly upgrade is the most significant upgrade for any Firefly main team. Just like how DOT mains, the E1s are like very significant. So I feel like our first ever poo being E2 Firefly, it is pretty justifiable, right? And like I mentioned, if you don't want to play Firefly, you don't poo for this. If you want to play Firefly, this is the most diabolical upgrade I can get. So that I pretty much do, and we just had ourselves the recent Nova Flare for Firefly as well as the Dahlia upgrade. So even their current placements in break performance, it is really like not that far off. And if you want to be in doubt, she's a girlfriend. For all I might know, Firefly might get a second Nova Flare, and I don't even know who the fuck is Reba after like 3 years later, right? So we are gonna put our E2 Firefly as our first ever poo. Moving on to Jay, I'm gonna keep it about, I don't even remember who the fuck she is. So let's just put that over there. And put that over there, right? That's very cool. And moving on into the next unit, and that is gonna, even without, okay, with or without Blade, right? With or without Blade, with or without like any Nihility, with or without Carl, whatever the fuck. The E1 and E2s for Jiaozhou were just not that crazy, bro. Like, it really is a very mediocre E1 with an even more mediocre E2. Like, back then, if you were a DOT main, maybe you get the E2. But nowadays, like, bro, scaling for DOT is just like so mid. Like, it's just not worth it, right? You can have like High Silence, you can have like Black Swan. It's like, it is just a little bit too low. And I cannot justify Aggron mains. Okay, like, let's just be fucking for it, right? The only people pulling for Jiaozhou is Aggron mains. And Aggron mains, they have options. So I just cannot see a world where like your E1 Jiaozhou or even E2 Jiaozhou is going to be able to compete with potentially what's going to be coming out in like the future version of which I don't know if Blade is going to be a support for Aggron, but you know, at the end of the day, that is going to end, right? So that will be for our Jiaozhou rating. Alright, Yunli, number 1, I wouldn't pull for Yunli, right? Because she is going to be part of the center pool. But this E1 is pretty good, right? Like strictly from like a damage increment perspective, it is a very decent damage increase, but Yunli as a unit is just like getting cooked, bro. Like, she really is just getting cooked, right? The damage output from a counter unit in HS are just too fucking slow. This is not Epic 7. You don't have tank down, right? You have to kind of just get your action value in as fast as possible. And if the boss is gonna be moving too slow and your unit doesn't let go of enough counters, you just don't do enough damage. So unfortunately, we are gonna be not pulling for our Yunli Eidolons right there. In any case, next target. This is a informative, unbiased, low cortisol, analytical, informational video with no agenda, right? There's no agenda. Today we have absolutely zero agenda today, right? I think we can all agree there's been zero agenda. Okay, maybe a little bit for E2 though. I'm a little bit biased, but I have been like on a roll, bro. I have been on a roll, right? I have been on a roll. So with all that being said and done, right? With all that being said and done, okay, can we just agree? If you are gonna be a Fei Xiao main, right? Like let's just agree, guys, right? Let's just agree. You are not putting Fei Xiao in the same fucking caliber as Luo Cha, bro, right? As Jingyuan, bro, right? So let's just fucking agree. Realistically speaking, objectively speaking, they are not the same. Because Fei Xiao E2 is still doing extremely good anger. Like, no matter how much you want to slender Fei Xiao, she's still doing clears, bro. Like, she is doing clears more than E2 Aggron. Right? Now, whether or not E2 Aggron is going to change everything in the future, as of right now, I think this is very fair. Right? In the future, when we do get ourselves Blade and whatever the fuck, if we move out Aggron, when Aggron does get stronger, I think it's okay. But I think this is a very fair placement. Right? I'm like being super fair right now. So do not expect me to go any higher or any lower. This is pretty much it. Because if you are a Fei Xiao main, E2 Fei Xiao is absolutely fucking disgusting. But if you were a Fei Xiao main, you can also acknowledge that for Fei Xiao clears, you do need to, you know, min-max the ever-living fuck out of her teams. or get them the Astral Vertical Investment, specifically E1 Astral. It improves the damage by quite a lot. Then you can get off like very good clears with face out, right? Like, I am pretty fucking sure out there's like an E2 face out clear with a 0 cycle anomaly running S1 face Astral. Like, just search Bilibili, there's definitely some E2 face outs out there that can 0 cycle anomaly. That's how much I believe in face out, right? In any case, let's move on into the next unit, and that, the brick. Okay, I'm not saying that E1 Lingsha is bad, because honestly, E1 Lingsha is pretty good. And to be fair to the viewers, right, like I mentioned, it is not an elitist tier list, right? It is a tier list meant for players who want to play this game and how do they improve their team. E1 Lingsha is good, bro, right? It is a good Eidolon. You get break effect. You get break efficiency. So it helps you break a lot faster, right? So I think this one is honestly not too shabby of an Eidolon per se. This E2 is not worth it. I think E1 is a very, very good storm. Okay, I think that E1 is low-key gonna be here. If you were an elitist and you don't want to run Lingsha sustain, you can drop it down here, right? But if you're just someone looking to like, okay, you know you want to run Lingsha, right? You're definitely using Lingsha in your E2 Firefly team. Priority for vertical upgrades. I will put this lower, or rather higher than maybe E1 Fuke. Lower than E1 Dahlia. Around that caliber. Okay, actually around the same as E1 Fuke. Because Fuke can build up towards E2 Fuke for DDD. So cost investment on Firefly. After you get E2 Firefly, I will work towards E1 Dahlia. And then we talk about Fuke before Lingsha. Then Lingsha as your last slot. You know what I'm saying? So Firefly first, then Dahlia, then Fuke, then Lingsha. So if I put Lingsha here later on, you can kind of just see like where our list is going to be. So that is going to be our E1 Lingsha with the E2 not really being needed whatsoever. The next unit is going... Where is it? Oh. Okay, E1 Rappa is kind of similar to E1 Bodio. Like, they are like pretty decent investments. Right? Where is it? Bro, like, both of these Eidolons for their respective mains, it is a good investment. It is not as crazy as Firefly, but like if you were gonna be a Rappa main or Bodio main, these are like up there, right? You get the additional energy, right? I help you a little bit of a defense stuff. So I will put E1 Rappa around the same as E1 Bodio. The E2 is also a little bit excessive though. So same as Bodio, they are just like very, very similar, but they basically suffer from one unfortunate issue, which is they are not our girlfriend, right? They are not our girlfriend. They have no Nova Flare. They have no love. They have no care. So it is what it is. Let's just move on into the final unit of version 2 before we jump. Oh, wait. Second final unit. Sunday. Okay. First off, this E2 completely redundant. You don't need this E2, right? It literally just does almost nothing. A little of energy is chill. The E1 though, right? As much as y'all want to clown on Sunday, right? Defense ignore on the E1 with DH, because you do get a stun, right? It is pretty good, right? It is honestly pretty good. It is just that you don't really see him being in play that much anymore, because it's gonna be a lot more niche. Mainly, I can see a home with Sunday Final, right? I can see a home with maybe if you want to run like Sunday Asheville. I think Sunday Asheville is still pretty good. I'm not sure who the hell is still running 133, 134 speed setup with Sunday. Aglaya stopped using Sunday like very, very long ago, right? Aglaya has really been using like all the other supports. So just because of like the niche level of Sunday, as of right now, I'll put him around this tier. It is not as bad as the E2, but it is like not that crazy. But if for okay, like the reason why I say but, right, is because Sparkle did get Nova Flare. And the Sparkle and Sunday war have been going on for like a very, very long time. Right? So, like, if Sparkle did in fact get a Nova Flare and she get out being given out free, I actually wouldn't be too surprised if Sunday also eventually gets a Nova Flare, like maybe next year. Right? So, when that happens, we can kind of go up on a little bit more into this placing. Until then, I think this is a pretty fair statement, if I can say so myself. Now, we're going to go on to the actual last unit for version 2, and that is going to be Fagyu. Okay, Fagyu is in a little bit more of an interesting spot because at E0, she's really, really bad. Right? She has no break efficiency. The additional Axel Toughness might not even get Witness Broken. But both E1 and E2 is gonna be way more of an importance compared to the E1 Lingsha. So I'll put the E1 Fuke over here. This DDD, I swear it changes everything. And not just because I love DDD, but DDD do be DDD, bro. Right? At the end of the day, you gotta respect the DDD. And on top of that, because you get the additional energy from breaking, you can actually run far guild with 4-piece Eagle after you get an E2 DDD, right? And action value is going to help a lot for your Super Raid team, because one of the reasons why Super Raid is doing very well is also because of HMC spamming ultimates. So if you have HMC breaking, Firefly breaking, and HMC also gets more energy from breaking the target, imagine a second HMC DDD. Alright, so I think this one is honestly really, really good. The only reason why this is probably not along the same caliber as DOT is because this is an E2, which is a little bit expensive, and I would, before getting E2 Fuke, I will try to prioritize a little bit more for the Nadia E1 first, right? So really good upgrade, but around this caliber is gonna be fine. So that is gonna be our version 2 units, Eidolons, every single E1 as well as every single E2. If you have found this video to be very nice, like I mentioned, 1,000 likes will do an E6 tier list, right? And also, it is not easy making a tier list, bro. I swear it is not, because there is never gonna be a bad opinion. So if you guys could just share some love for your streamer, for your HSR guy, please leave helpful and thoughtful comments showing me love by making a tier list, right? We are now gonna be moving on into version 3, which is the latest update for our HSR before we finally jump into version 4, and that is going to start off with the Herda. Okay. I think the Herda, if you want to play her, you will not really focus too much. Okay, it's not as bad as them. It is alright for the E1, but the E2 is good, bro. Right, the Herda's E2 genuinely is a good E2. It is just that she is not going to be as crazy as you could expect, especially with all of the environments going away. Also, I'ma keep it a buck, Anexa low-key holding her back. Alright, he really does, bro. Because, like, the bounce splits the damage by too much, and the buffs he provided the Herda is insufficient. So it leads to a suboptimal DPS from Anexa, as well as suboptimal DPS from the Herda. The only good thing that Anexa can do is he does get off a bounce, which can generate a decent amount of energy. But if we do have like a version 4 every edition that can synergize better with the Herda, I think the Herda can actually go up. Right, so I think for now, I think this tier around this caliber is gonna be okay. If we have more environments favoring the Herda, I think she can also go up a little bit higher. But for now, E2 the Herda is gonna be around this caliber, right? Next unit, we are gonna be talking about Aggie. Okay, I'm gonna keep it about this Aggie. This E1 season, right? This E1 is genuinely insane. If you are gonna be an Aglaia main, it is 90, right? You will pretty much never ever run out of energy regeneration. And E1 Aglaia performance, even till this day, is still really good. It is like up there, bro. It is like probably top 5 E1 teams. So if you were an Aglaia main, this E1 is going to be your #1 priority, right? It is like playing E0 final. Like I'm playing E0 Aglaia. So this is super recommended #1 upgrade any Aglaia. Not too much to be said over here. I don't think E2 is that crazy. If anything, this E2's priority list is very low. So probably all the way, maybe even lower than D-Herda actually. I might not even consider pulling for this, because the upgrade is not worth the opportunity cost, if it makes sense. Alright, like I would rather start giving more cost towards E2 Cyrene, so nowhere near as crazy as the benefits for E2 Fuke or even E2 Herda for this thing, right? So I'll put the E2 Aglaia around this caliber right here. Next unit is none other. Oh wait, it's not 3B yet. It is gonna be E1 Midas. Okay, I think E1 Midas performance is really clean as well. Really clean. I think he's honestly up there with E1 Aglaia. Because you essentially get God Slayer's targeting, you completely change him from a destruction unit to an erudition unit. So he will never face the problems where you can't deal with the mobs anymore, and your multiplier goes up substantially for your God Slayer. And Maide himself works super well with Cyrene, with Teep, with Ceridra. So it is a little bit similar to Aglaia. If you do want to play Maide, that E1 upgrade is significant. It's significant enough that I will warrant this to the same caliber as those over here. Same thing for Aglaia. I don't think this E2 is too worth it. You do get more charge, but I don't think it's gonna be that crazy. Like, I will still prioritize trying to get that E2 Cyrene as fast as possible, because these Kratos hairs the most important vertical investments for a Crystal team that not going to be Remembrance, it is pretty much going to be that E2 Cyrene. So I'm going to put this around the same tier as Eidolons, right? So the next unit is finally going to be E1 Tribby, right? Okay, E1 Tribby, before y'all put her in poo, right? The damage increment from E0 to E1 is a completely different unit. It really is a completely different unit, right? Like, even from back then till now, her value on the additional true damage is probably the reason why she's no longer tier 0 on your tier list. Alright, that being said, she is slowly starting to get replaced because there are fewer teams that uses E1 Tribby nowadays. Alright, she is no longer so much like every single DPS can run Tribby plus highest. You step on a wheelchair, every single DPS, it doesn't really work anymore. But she can still see a decent amount of play outside of what you would normally expect. For example, did you know you can use E1 Tribby with break? Because break damage scales with E1 Tribby. Because it's true damage. Crazy. You can also use E1 Tribby with your elation teams. Because true damage is true damage, right? And as a benefactor of S5 DDD, I think even after almost an entire year, she can be out there. Alright. If you don't want to pull E1 Tribby and you're gonna be sticking with E0, it's chill. But you are essentially kind of wasting that one cost where you could have gotten a very, very good side grade, even if it is not best in slot. Right? It might not be best in slot for every single scenario, but the option of having such a versatile E1, it reminds me a little bit of like Rame back in those days, where like she might not be best in slot, but her being there offers you the alternative to save up that Stellar Jade's cost, where you might not necessarily need the best in slot, and just use it as a replacement temporarily speaking, because the E1 is good. Also, if this is not for S5 DDD, she'll be here. Alright, but S5 DDD, I'm just gonna assume that you do have an S5 DDD. So if you don't have S5 DDD, I'll put this here. If you do, then bada boom, bada bang, bada bang. Poo. Okay, this E2 is bro. This is like, it's just additional damage, right? So I would personally just not even pull for the E2 Tribby. It is just a no of it, right? You just do a little bit more. I would rather save those costs for your DPS or for the supports on the slot trees that can get a little bit more vertical investments. So this E2 is like really, really inconsequential. Now moving on into the next unit, and finally we do have ourselves global passive. Our first ever global passive, right? Back then, if you would ask me for 2 costs, E2 Casterist was insane. She really was, bro. You get the additional new buff, you get the charge, you get the swipe, you get the damage, right? Enhanced skill. It was insane. But we have Evernight E2, we have Higher Scene E2, and we have Cyrene E2 nowadays. So I would say in terms of priority in the full, I'm only gonna assume you're playing Casterist in full Remembrance team, right? Nowhere else. Only Casterist, Evernight, Higher Scene, Cyrene. In a full Remembrance team, I unironically feel her E1 and E2 has the lowest priority out of everyone. So with that being said, I don't think it is like you completely skip this, because it is still a good enough vertical cost upgrade, but it's not too much of a priority. So for that, I will put both E1 and E2 casters along the caliber right here. The ones that will have a priority, it will be explained later on, but this should be one of your last few puzzles you get if you are gonna be thinking about vertically upgrading your Remembrance flagship. So with that being established, let's move on into the next unit, which is, okay, Anaxa genuinely had his moment, bro. His moment was like when it was good, bro. Because we had like the MOC buff with the skill damage, we had the Nicadors, right? We had the Sustainers runs, we have all of the low cost Anaxa team curse is kind of crazy. Nowadays, you really want to run him with Ceredra and Cyrene, and if you do run him as a hyper carry, I think it's not that bad. Hyper carry and Anaxa can still kind of pull off his weight, but like as it gets more and more difficult, the problem arises when the enemy summons an infinite amount of mobs. and then your bounce damage just keeps scattering and getting wasted. We are having lower and lower like those like MrPokke minions that stay in one place and give you this single target to spam all of your skills, right? Okay, Nikodor is unironically pretty good for Nexa, but I don't think he is gonna be super bad. If you want to play him as a hyper carry, you can, but the teams that Nexa use as a hyper carry, it is pretty much the exact same team as E1 Archer. It is also pretty much the exact same team you are gonna be able to use. What is the other Bago again? Maide. Because Maide can also use Ceridra and Cyrene, right? So like, his role is no longer as like crucial, but if you were an Nexa main, I'ma keep it a buck, I think it's probably around here. Whereas this one basically makes him become a silver wolf, right? You get a silver, you get a little bit more res pen, but I think it's kind of okay. But if you want to think about the damage increments, it is not going to be as crazy as those up there, right? But if you want to go, you can still go for it. Moving on into the next DPS, and that is going to be Hyacinth. Okay, I'ma keep it a buck. Hyacinth's E1 is unironically really fucking good. You get all the additional value for, because like nowadays, right, if you were to run a Hyacinth, mainly it's remembrance damage or remembrance team comp. You don't really run Hyacinth as a wheelchair anymore. Maybe back in 2025 we did, right? You could run Chibi Hyacinth, but that wheelchair has kind of retired. And it is really more so like if you're gonna be running your Elation flagship, if you're gonna be running your Super Raid team, your DOTs, and no one really cares about Hyacinth that much. And if you truly wanted a universal sustain, DHPD can actually sustain very well. So the main benefit from Hyacinth is still stuck back then in her Remembrance archetype team comp. But in a Remembrance archetype team comp, her E1 actually substantially increased the amount of overall charge you're gonna be able to obtain. And this speed buff, I do personally think it is more significant than E2 casters. Okay, maybe not as crazy as like, because at the end of this, it's a little bit expensive, right? It is a little bit expensive. But this speed buff, right, it lets your whole team take more turns, especially your Avenite, Cyrene, and casters. And technically behind yourself. So you taking more turns is technically a direct upgrade on your new butt generation. And the only reason why I don't want to put this a little bit higher is because we have this other unit called Avenite. So I don't think it's going to be that crazy. But this E2, after you get an E1 and you finish up an Avenite upgrade, you can definitely consider this E2, because if your whole team moves faster, you are literally going to be able to get more charge for every single environment you're going to be facing as a Remembrance flagship. It is just that back then, this was not fully explored because nobody could really afford that many costs for the Remembrance flagship on launch. But as time has progressed and we have a lot more reruns, people are starting to realize that wait, E2 Hyacinth actually has like a lot of additional action value that they're able to save. Because hey, 30% is a significant amount over there, right? So with that being established, we are now gonna jump into the Car as a unit. I'm not gonna debate whether or not she is like good or bad, but it's really hard to use her with a sustain. So the few times you can use Car, you probably can run her as a sustainless to deal like true damage, patient stacking. And like the way that your Car's kit work is that you have to deal as much damage as humanly possible. You just have to, right? If you don't deal enough damage, especially with a sustain, the patron count for your true damage is substantially falls off. Because the way sustainer team work in HSR is that your one more sustain, it exponentially increases the overall team's damage. But one more support, right? But one less support means your whole team's damage goes down by a lot. Which means that Cypher in a team with a sustain is very hard to make use of her kit, right? With that being said, I think this E1 is pretty good because you still increase the overall patronage stacking. So I think I can see this probably around here. But her usage rate is just not gonna be that crazy. And I think this E2 is probably it is pretty redundant, right? I would say E1 is a very decent starting point. Around the same thing as Tribi actually. It is just that she is gonna be a lot harder to use because she relies on your team going sustainless. You just kind of just have to go for it, right? So that is gonna be that for Car. Next unit. Oh my god, no. Isolation. And there it is, right? Okay, elephant of the room. This E1 is like right? This E1 is honestly nobody really cares about the E1. You don't ever stop at the E1 final, right? But, alright, but I really think for a non-main push unit, bro, this E2 final crazy, bro. Alright, this is essentially what the E2 Phylon can compare to with the upgrade for an E2 Firefly. Problem with, unfortunately, is that E1 Phylon is way worse than E1 Firefly. Alright, but this E2, alright, I think time and time again, it has been proven that against any shield environments with or without remembrance, with or without elation, the ability to consistently get off the extra turn, it makes him one of the best unit to slam down a sustainless run. I think if you ask anybody in HSR, like, who is their most comfortable sustainless unit, players are probably gonna be choosing either sustainless Subrik or sustainless Phylon. Because he kind of low-key removes your pressure on your other units when you activate Domain Expansion. And he does do so much fucking damage brewing sustainless. It's like, having that additional turn, it more than, I would say, boosts your damage by like okay, maybe not double. That was a bit excessive. Probably like 50 to 60% final damage increase. And for those of you guys who say Phylon is a main push, I am the camp that there's only one main push, right? There's only one girlfriend, right? There's no such thing as 2 main push, 3 main push, 4 main, 10 main. There's only one main push, right? I would say the closest thing Phylon is that if the main character was Cyrene, Phylon was the best of friendo. Right? Phylon was the best of friendo, right? And there it is, right? Very, very good. In any case, E2 Phylon, if you want to play Phylon, this is the absolute best investment you can make. Bada boom, bada bang. Okay, next unit is going to be... Alright, we are not going to talk about Saber. So, I'm just gonna... Well, maybe one day she gets a support, right? Maybe one day she gets a dedicated support, dedicated sustain, right? Energy-based support and energy-based sustain, except that it's better than Huan Huan. Then maybe she can have a little bit more of a home. So with that, like, oh my god, though. And there we do, and there we do, the god of E1. I will honestly put this up here, but frankly speaking, E1 Archer's performance, I don't think they compare as close to the E2 Phylons and the E2 Fireflies. The E1 Tribute is just that versatile, so I'll put this around the top of Poo. If you were an E1 Archer main, this E1 Archer is a significant fucking damage increase. Because you get 2 more skill points, which essentially allows you to have way more freedom for your team to go around with their own skills. And it's not just skill points for Archer, it is for your entire team as well, right? So I would say this is gonna be a significant W. Also, the only other Eidolon DPS that my free-to-play has, I think this E2 is like super... Okay, it's not that bad, because you essentially go off element for every... This is basically a skill move, right? So if you really want to use Archer long term, I probably put this around here. But I wouldn't really see this being like super universal unless you have to force him into both halves of Epoch Shadows where they both do not have quantum weakness. And I don't think it's that crazy, but a free implant is still gonna be a free implant. Not as close to the caliber as like E2 Herda or Cyrene or rather Hyacinth, but that is gonna be our E2 Archer. With that out of the way, I believe we still have... Oh, we actually have quite a bit. Okay, we are now gonna move on to Dirt. I think same thing for our DOT mains. All E1 DOTs are just like really good vertical investments. So I will just place Hyacinth the same reason why I place Kafka as well as Black Swan here. If you want to play DOT, all DOTs are like Eidolon merchants. You just get E1 for every single DOT, you're done, right? So that's gonna be done. I don't think this E2 is that crazy, but for E2 Hyacinth specifically, I'ma keep it a buck. Okay, there we go. I don't think this is as crazy as compared to like the calibers here. Maybe along here. Oh, E1 Hyacinth is poo. We have to put E1 Hyacinth as poo. My DOT main says, bro, it's poo. If you have a problem with E1 Hyacinth being poo, you can take it up with my DOT main, right? Alright, I'm gonna be moving on because I don't really want to dwell too much on this butter buckle. E1 Saridra is frankly a little bit more niche because you get the defense ignore, but the times you use Saridra with, it is mainly stacking on with your archers, with your Midas, with your Anexa, with your Finance. I think it is not as crazy as this, but it is up there because all those units I listed, they scale off of defense reduction, right? Anexa is building defense now, Archer is Archer, right? Midas, you can get like a little bit more defense penetration now. So I think with that being said, for those Saridra-based teams, having the additional defense down paired up with DPS that can make use of defense down, it is going to be slightly below, but I'll put it right up in there, right? E2 is a little bit excessive. I don't think this E2 is that crazy, so I will just run this around like, okay, around here. Right, I don't think this is that crazy. E1 is a very, very good stopping point for Saridra, so that's gonna be done. I think with that, we are gonna be down to the last 3 DPS. E1 DHPD actually gives you a skill point, by the way. If you run Bro in like Archer, you probably see some use. But most of the time, because DHPT is almost a fully skill point neutral unit, you almost permanently cast basic with DHPT. I don't really face that big of a skill point issue unless it was like a misplay or something. So I think I can live without that E1. It is like something that you can overcome because you know, the teams that you're going to be using with, he's not a very skill point hungry unit to begin with. The E2 though, from personal experience, I really like this E2. You deal like a lot of damage. Okay, you get 18% res pen. Okay, fine, done, right? Then E2, I'm just gonna put it up there because personally, I really like the E2 DHPD's additional follow-up attack damage. Absolutely insane, but I don't think it's gonna be as crazy as the poo-poos over here. So I'm gonna be going there. Then next unit is gonna be Avenite. I'm gonna be low-key speeding this up a little because the video is gonna be going towards 1.5 hours. E1 Avenite, absolute fucking insane. E2 Avenite, I feel that it is almost in the caliber as Poo Poo Poo. You know what? I low-key want to make this Poo Poo Poo. Then I just pull this up over here. Okay, this looks a little bit good. I will put E1 Avenite in the Poo Poo and then E2 Avenite in the Poo Poo because this is going to be essentially one of your first steps towards vertical investments for your Remembrance flagship. So you get yourself, say redo casters one more time, I will drop her all the way down here. Where does she go? Alright, I will drop her all the way down here. How about that? Yeah, let's redo casters. Because genuinely, who the fuck pulls for E2 casters nowadays? Alright, is that good? Okay. Okay, that's just fantastic. As I was saying, this is infinitely way more valuable than E2 casters could ever be. Really up there, but definitely the first thing you upgrade in your Remembrance. I would say the second thing is actually gonna be your Hyacinth. Cyrene E2 is not super crazy for Remembrance. It is more so for outside of Remembrance flagships, but I will put the Avenite, followed by Hyacinth, followed by Cyrene, followed by casters, all the way down, right? So are we good? Okay, we are good, right? Do we have any more redo casters? Say redo casters one more time. Please say it. Please say it. Watch me put this here, bro. Watch me put this on the same tier as fucking... say it. Say it. Okay, let's stop slandering, guys. Let's stop slandering. Okay, with that, we are finally gonna come to the final unit of version 3. And that is none other than Mimemi. Alright. Okay, I feel that for Cyrene, right, she is a very special unit because, like, you can use her a lot outside from Remembrance flagship, even though she was originally built for Remembrance flagship. But that use case outside of Remembrance flagship, it doesn't really take into full considerations until you get an E2. So with that being said, I think this E1 is like really fucking mid. It's just so mid. But this E2, it will allow you to play HSR like a different game. Because you would have access to this team called our team-wide energy regeneration. I'm not talking about like just in Amphorius. You can literally run E2 Cyrene outside of the entirety of version 3. I've seen E2 Sirenes with Evanesia slapping on 480G energy corrigation. I've seen E2 Sirene clapping cheeks with triple DOT because she's gonna be the sustainers run. So this will legitimately open up an entirely... I could spend 3 hours making a team building video just for E2 Sirene because of how many use cases you can run her with in the whole game, right? So if you wanted to just play his like entirely different, like a whole legit like Aladdin song, a whole new world, this is your whole new world, right? You can feel what it's like to have triple full energy without waiting for 20 billion action value. So I'll put this up in here for the E2 Sirene, #1 most Doom posted unit of all time. And yes, this in fact was sponsored by Dawei. Dawei wants me to put this here so that everybody will be spending $20 billion to pull for an E2 Sirene. Thank you, Dawei, for sponsoring. Okay, with all that being said, I think we have come to the end of our version 3 Eidolon tier list. We are finally gonna be moving on into the version 4 Eidolon tier list. Oh wait, there's a Dahlia. Fuck me in the ass. Okay, you know what? This is good. This is really good. E1 Dahlia is about the same as I would say E1 Airline. This is a super good E1. Slightly below E2 Firefly, but this is definitely going to be up there for your vertical cost. The second thing right after E2 Firefly, the E2 feels a little bit excessive. I don't really think E2 is too worth it. Like, I will start branching out towards my Fuke E2 instead of thinking of the E2 Dahlia. So I'll probably put this like somewhere here. Okay, being the same as casual is a bit slanderous. I'll put it around somewhere here. It is good, but not super insane. But the E1 is gonna be a very nice stopping point, right? Yeah, it's good for like AoE content in Pure Fiction, but like, do you really have problems with E2 Firefly in Pure Fiction? No, right? Because you get E2 Firefly first, followed by Dahlia, and E2 Firefly claps every single fucking bitch ass in Pure Vision in the first place, so you don't really need E2 Dahlia for that specifically, right? And with that out of the way, I can finally jump into the Elation Wars, and oh boy, we are also gonna be talking about the Eidolon investment value for the 2 Elation main push and side push. Starting off with the E1 Yao Guang, I'm gonna keep it about. It is really good, but not that insane yet. So all ratings that we are going to be looking at version 4, it is based on what we see right now, and we are unsure of what's going to be happening when the new Elation supports or sustains are going to come out. When they come out and they show to be more synergistic with Yao Guang, she goes up. If they come out and they replace Yao Guang, she goes down. But as of right now, I think this is going to be one of the probably second or third upgrade cost investments. So you will ideally first get either E2 Silver Wolf, E1 Evanesia, or you go towards your E1 Yao Guang. So it's like pretty much the next thing you upgrade at this point of time, which I will say it is gonna be good enough. E2 Yao Guang, it reminds me a little bit of E2 Hyacinth. But as of right now, again, the full value is not going to be utilized, just like how Hyacinth back then was not also fully utilized. So I'll put it slightly lower, but it is basically what E2 Hyacinth is going to be able to do for Remembrance flagship, right? So that's going to be for our Yao Guang. Okay, Sparksicle, she is a very interesting character because in a vacuum, you could play E2 Sparksicle as a main DPS. You 100% good, because like you get a lot more additional turns. Slapping on with Sparkle and stack on defense down, E2 main DPS Sparkle is super viable. But the more important thing is that the E2 also gives you a lot of trails, which is like her skill point economy, and you get the extra turn to generate more energy. Right, you get more energy. So with that, your support capabilities specifically for E2 Silverwolf is like super fucking high. Like really fucking high. It is just slightly underneath Silverwolf herself. And it also is super fucking high, even for Evanesia. So this E2 will be definitely up there. The E1 is essentially like a stepping bridge towards the E2. So I'll put this around here. And then the E2 Sparksicle is gonna go up there. Holy, there's too many fucking pages. Alright, I'll put this E2 Sparkle up there because you can in fact use them with both E2 Silverwolf and E1 Evanesia. The extra turn helps you a lot with your punchline generation, which directly converts later on into certified bangers. For Evanesia main specifically, I will hold off on E2 Sparkle because I'm a little bit concerned if you are going to be able to get a certified banger Sparksy. As of right now, we don't know, but if you do have an E2 Sparksy, she can definitely see a lot of play in your Evanesia team comp, right? So with that out of the way, we are finally get into the... Oh wait, not the elephant on the room yet, right? Okay. Fei Xiao mains. This is really, really good. Alright, for Fei Xiao mains, right, for my 10 Fei Xiao mains out there, this is a really good item. Goes up to 36% damage, which is a significant, just purely from raw damage multiplier wise. It is quite nice, but as a overall stat, where the fuck is Fei Xiao again? This is Fei Xiao, right? Okay, I would put her around this caliber, slightly more than Fei Xiao. And the main reason why I put this here is also because I don't believe Asheville is gonna be purely stuck with a hyper carry Asheville or only be supporting Fei Xiao. So in the future, if we get another follow-up attack main DPS, this can go up even higher. Right, because 36% damage taken is still going to be up to 36% damage taken, so we'll put this at this caliber. The E2 is kind of really mainly for that main DPS Asheville, but it is a very significant damage upgrade because you are going to be able to get 18 stacks of Gluttony, and the bare minimum ceiling goes up by 6. So you're always going to be getting full stacks every single time. And E2 main DPS Asheville is I've seen a lot of very interesting showcases, but I still feel it is not going to be his real usage. So I'll put this E2 around this thingy. Like, if you want to commit for Asheville, both E1 and E2 are like very significant damage upgrades. So not quite as crazy as those over here. So just slightly around the same ballpark at the Pool Plus category. And now, oh my god, I've been waiting for this entire video, bro. The final two Eidolons. This is the final part. Okay, I'm not going to do standard units because like, it's standard units, right? The final two Eidolons in our informative peace, love, and happiness Eidolon tier list video. I'm gonna do them both at the same time, right? And that is none other than E2 Silver Wolf versus E2 Evanesia. Captain America versus Tony Stark. The question is, who is Captain America? Who is Iron Man? Who will win? Who will lose? You decide in the next episode of Elation Wars. So, for this particular ranking, right, we'll set some ground rules, right? Ground rules. We are not gonna play the what if game, alright? What if we get Elation Cyrene? What if the Elation Sustain is better for you? What if there's no what if? I'm only gonna be basing whatever I see with my own two eyes right now, right? As of this very current moment. No what ifs. Zero what ifs, right? Right now, bare bones, the team we have best in slot versus the team we have best in slot. So with that being established, alright, E1 versus E1, I think this is a very fair placing, right? I don't think this should be too controversial, right? This E1 is pretty much the absolute most. If I could put rank 1 DPS E1, this is gonna be it, right? But this is just a general pool tier list. Absolutely disgusting scaling, disgusting energy regeneration, disgusting everything, right? You are literally almost doubling your ultimates. Almost, right? And in the future, when you get more elation units, the energy regeneration is just gonna go up even higher because you get even more bangs from that, right? Whereas for E1 Silver Wolf, it is not super bad, but it definitely doesn't really compare that well with E1 Evanesia. It is still not too shabby because you still get a little bit more of the value from the revamp, right? So I would say if you commit for an E1 Silver Wolf, nobody stops at an E1 Silver Wolf. Right? If you are gonna be going for a Silver Wolf Islands, you are either E0 Silver Wolf or E2 Silver Wolf. Whereas for Evanesia, you are the option of E0 or E1. So it's like a little bit more of a flexibility for players who want to think which elation main push, slight push, they want to vertically support. And this brings us to the final Eidolon, right? Okay, honestly, I'm just gonna be so for you, right? This one is like completely up to you. Because E2 Silver Wolf and E2 Evanesia, they are both suffering from the same traits. Like, they are both really, really good, right? See, like, I'm so heavy, right? Yeah. Okay, can we use this for our thumbnail? Happy, right? Happy. So, both E2 Evanescence and E2 Silverwolf, they are like really... Yo, Lino, thank you so much for the 4 months. They are like really, really good, right? And they also both suffer from a similar issue, which is they cannot fully make use of the Eidolon value at a glance as of right now. Because you cannot fully get 240 hidden MMR for Silverwolf every single time, and you also cannot fully really get every single Elation teammate giving you the additional bangers from the E2 Evanescence. But you want to see the state of the game where we are at as of this moment. And we have also done our own testings, right? I will just pose this very real scenario. Right now, Wish Arc Lotus gives us punchlines. Joyous Ascended gives us punchlines. The fucking Chicken Man gives us punchlines. Everyone and their moms, they are giving us punchlines. While although punchlines, they are converted into certified bangers for Evanescence to use later on, the direct benefit of punchline from the environment is mainly for Silverwolf, so that you can both get her hidden MMR state as well as 120/240 for your E2, right? So if this scenario was to go away, you really need to essentially lock in for that Silverwolf support. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm guessing what's gonna happen is that when they remove all the punchline stuff, they will then release the solution to the problem, right? The problem right now is you don't have enough punchlines. So the solution is they release the Silverwolf support or the Silverwolf sustain that can give her the punchlines that she needs. So if you're gonna commit for Silverwolf, you legit have to commit, bro. It's like the same as Casterus back then. If you're gonna be committing for Casterus Remembrance, are you really gonna be skipping on Evernight? Are you really gonna skip Cyrene? Right? And to a certain extent, you could make this argument for a lot of DPS HSR. Like, if a Firefly main is going to be putting Firefly, they're not going to skip Dahlia. Or a Final main is not going to skip Saridra, same shit. But like, for Silverwolf, not only are your base kits tied to getting the vertical supports, the entire value of your E2 is going to be dependent if you hit the 240. If you don't hit 240, you completely waste the extra turn. Like, there's no like in between. It's either 0 or 100, right? You either get it or you don't. Whereas for Evanescence, if you miss out on that support, right, you don't have the best slot elation, you get less bangers, but it is not like a 0-100, right? You just get lesser. But maybe you could get a little bit more from getting hit. You get a little bit more from like killing the enemies. You could like save Eidolons a little bit later. Whereas for Silver, it's like, oh, you don't hit. You are at 239 out of 240. Go fuck yourself. You get nothing, right? So because of that, right? Because of that, as of right now, I mean, I don't think they are like E2s. Like, they're both insanely fucking good. Oh my, I really try to be a super neutral. I'm being extremely neutral. I'm being extremely, because at the end of the day, it is an Elation flagship, right? So they're definitely both up there, right? Just like how Casters were both up there. At the end of the day, I personally feel it'll be something like this. And a very good reason why I think E2 Silver right now is around this category, right? E2 Sparksy can technically do your job for you. Right? If you're gonna be running Silverwolf on the E2, not having the E2 Sparksy means you're not even gonna activate the E2, bro. So that is gonna be my personal opinion. Again, I'm not trying to like start controversy, but I just genuinely feel kid-wise, Eidolon-wise, this feels like, as of this moment, it feels this way, right? It plays this way. It performs this way. But again, like I mentioned, in the future, right? In the future, when there are more elation supports and there are more elation states, right? Because this is not the full picture, right? This is the half a picture, because we only have half the teammates, right? When we get ourselves the elation slot 2, slot 3, or slot 3 and slot 4, I can see this being like this, right? But as of right now, because it is not the full picture, one last time, I will personally put it right here. There's no agenda because I like playing both. I literally have both at E2 and they play extremely well. But like feelings aside, your preference aside, as a matter of factly, it is without any dispute that if you don't hit that 240 on Silver Wolf, you just don't get it. Right? You literally just cannot make use of that E2, and the impact of not making use of E2, it feels more restrictive compared to E2 Ebenezer, right? So with that out of the way, I'm gonna end off again, just my opinion, very, very peaceful. I don't have any benefit from like Ebenezer main or Zero main. It is just as someone that owns both E2s and E1 Yao Guang and E0 S1 Sparksy and the Hui and the E1 Hui. Like, it feels this way. Of course, in the future, when we have more units coming out, I will change accordingly. Or we just don't know when that's gonna be. So let me know what you guys think in the thoughts and comments down below. How the hell do we screenshot this for Twitter, by the way? There is a good long-ass fucking screenshot, bro. And we are gonna put this for the most encouraging peace, love, happiness place in the entirety of HSR. And there it is, right? Word of the day is going to be... Oh, rank E4, well, meh. Word of the day is going to be... civil discussions, peace. Okay, you know what? Hey, if you guys don't want to be peaceful, fuck you guys. Alright? I tried, bro. I am playing like super peaceful the entire time. I've been like zero agenda. Just saying how it is. Join Twitch, join YouTube, join Discord. Use code POKE if you want to give us ups. 127. And I'll see you guys at the tag.